bodies. This will give you eventually a power over your Kundalini that is amazing, and it is a power that the power is connected to matter states. Each level of Kundalini you can open, and the things it is connected to a state of awareness and a state of matter. And as we begin to work with these currents now and bring in the deeper core currents of first creation, way beyond the 15-dimensional outer domains, we are going to be able to achieve progressively states of consciousness. Some of them may come first in the sleep state because the body can't hold the frequency of where you went when you laid your body down. Sometimes you will go into what's called a sati state, or the sadhistheta state, which is, we do this all the time to get transmission. Sometimes it's much easier. I'll get a block of transmission and then there's like a knot and the body just can't pull it. So actually lay the body down, stay awake, and transition through and go into what would be on a brainwave machine would register as sleep state, but you're not asleep. And you go from there, you can go all sorts of places. And we're going to learn, as we turn on these currents, we are getting the abilities to go not only traveling through the outer domains, but into the middle and the inner and the core domains from which first creation, where the first creation point exists. So we are developing Kundalini currents in order to heal our bodies, yes, in order to heal the planet, yes, but also in order to achieve state of mind, state of awareness, state of consciousness. And in relation to sacred sexuality, when you begin to work consciously with the elemental forces and your Kundalini forces, you can begin to share states where you can actually enter states and help other people to shift, help your partner to shift. You might not be able to use words to reach your partner because they may just not be ready to deal with the sophistication of the concepts that are being presented in the material that we offer. But what you can do is hold that. You already do hold that information that you've learned in your crystal body structure, in your body structure. It's in your cellular memory, encoded as encryption. Everything you've ever learned or experienced is in there, including these workshops. Now, what you can do is when you learn to bring those states back into a live energy field, you can share that information through direct cognition with your partners. So there's a way that you can really engage in sharing states that are higher than either person can go alone faster, where you can achieve any state all by yourself eventually in evolution. But when you put two people together and they are working consciously with a cleared Kundalini system, when it's running back in natural order, you can achieve various states of ascended consciousness much, much faster than you would be able to in the normal time scales that we work on here. So all of this applies to big cosmic things, to big planetary political things that are going on, and also directly to your personal intimate relationships. Tomorrow we will get into the victim-victimizer game and how that is running. But first, it's being carried on the mutated Metatronic keys. But first we're going to understand more about the keys, and particularly about elemental command, because we have a first full elemental command activation occurring tonight. It is a wave of frequency that is going to come through. They're going to let me know when it's coming, and we will go into live whatever it is we're going to go into. They haven't told me how it's going to work. It just involves tones that are calling on what are called the 5 densities. You'll see what the 5 densities are when we get through the tachyon stuff and into seeing elemental command broken out. At some point there will also be an atomic chart, the table of elements, the natural table of elements. That's going to take a while, but we can at least show you the structure of which it will be pulled and the basic categories that fit into that. At some point we will also be able to trace the key evolution of the Metatronic keys to see where they distort compared to the natural. From that we will be able to eventually someday decipher, this may not come for a while, but decipher what, because of the mutation in the keys, what are the mutation in the key objectification into subatomic particles, particle waves, and matter. So we'll be able to look at someday our atomic chart now, the table of elements as it exists in science right now, and compare it to the one that exists in natural crystic systems that don't have the planetary distortions we have. They had to say something really interesting, and I don't know why, but they're all right. They're saying this live. This activation tonight has something to do with beginning the process of healing element 3. Now, for a long time, we've referred to that thing that happens when you have company or your friend has company and you start getting into arguments or issues, right? It's like there's you, there's me, and there's element 3, that invisible element, that this invisible part of this energy dynamic that's making us fight with each other or making us not understand each other. So we always referred to it kind of offhandedly as element 3, like you, me, and whatever, right? Whatever's in whoever's field. Well, not too long ago they said to me, element 3 is out and about again. Okay. He said, element 3. I said, yeah. I said, element 3. Look it up on the chart. What chart? The atomic table. Oh, okay. So I looked up element 3. It's lithium. I don't know anything about lithium except that they do use it as a mind-altering drug when certain people have certain problems. They do use lithium. So we're doing research on lithium now because what the Blevins were pointing out to me was element 3, for instance, is one of the mutated elements. And what it does is serves as a chemical carrier for reverse-coded consciousness or frequency, which means it allows, it's through, lithium is, I believe, is it the core? Yeah. Lithium and the fact that the hydrogen doesn't have a neutron? Yeah. Okay. Those two things combined create something in the body chemically that is abnormal. And that abnormality allows twisted elemental forces that have gone Metatronic and that are running crystals, reversed sextant crystals, to actually attach chemically to the body and move in and out and actually build into your body. So this is just an example of how the understanding the connection between the keys and the mutated keys and the atomic charts have to do with it, because we're made of atoms and molecules and those things and elements. And it is element 3 as one of the mutations that is allowing the things to attach to our fields and get into our bodies, where our emotional bodies are being able to be controlled and directed sometimes by subconscious forces. Well, those subconscious forces are very, very conscious, and a lot of them aren't yours. They belong to other things that consciously attach. There are things called the incubi and succubi races, for instance, which we'll probably talk about more in maybe a little bit in FOL. They're called the ubis, actually, because they have something to do with the distortion in the universal Iumbi flame, where there's a time rip. And these particular races from the Adori side cross through this time rip, and they attach through various elements, one of them being element 3, to the bodies of life forms here, particularly human and hominid bodies, because they have more keys. And they literally suck energy off of you, and they are very interested in the sexuality of things. These are where, did you ever feel a presence with anyone that, I remember feeling this particularly like in the old days before I was married, where if you went to like a restaurant and somebody was kind of like, interested in you, and they were kind of like hanging around, and you knew they were interested in asking you for a date and that kind of thing, but you could feel this menacing presence about them. Now, was it A, they're a psycho killer, or B, something else, right? Most often it's the something else, but it can turn people into psycho killers, where the Ubi races will attach through the distorted elements, and they will take control from the D2 level, which is the telluric kingdom, the elemental kingdom. They will take control of the body chemicals and hijack your kundalini. And this is where you might find all of a sudden your sex drive just goes crazy, and you get that gotta have it thing, right? This is not a natural manifestation of the normal harmonic keys. Sexual energy is fine, and sex drive is a natural thing to have or not to have, because some people have very little of it. But there are certain spikes in the sex drive that come through chemically, and I wouldn't doubt it has to do with testosterone production as well, that are you and somebody else moving through your body. And the somebody else is interested in getting somebody else's body in order to use your body as a conduit to suck energy from them, which means suck keys from them, which means suck elementals from them, which means drain their life force. All right, so there are things, when we get into understanding sacred sex, there is lovely cushy stuff about sharing your chakras once you get them straightened out, and learning how to actually open your fields to someone without fully opening your fields in a way that allows distortions or harm to come to you, just in case their fields aren't clear, and you wouldn't want to send any of your distortions to them either. There's a process called screening that can be done. And screening is very much like what it sounds. You can screen the layers of your field and put on a one-way transfer thing. Anything that is Christic and holds that signature, and it's a field thing, right? Coming in or going out gets transmuted right there. Not blocked necessarily and sent back, but transmuted. But if it's too strong for you, it gets sent back like a mirror. All right, if it's coming at you. So there are certain technologies, once we get a bit more activations on elemental command, that we will be able to develop in our bodies. But right now, we wouldn't be able to do much with the screening technique. You can do a little bit with it, but not a lot. Your Maharic seal will still help. Any of the technologies we've worked with will help because you're putting a lot of frequency in there in the CRIS code that can assist in transmuting anything else in yourself or that comes at you that is not of the CRIS code. But at this point, we have the Metatronic mess activating and accelerating in the planetary grids, which means it's accelerating in the portions of our body that aren't healed yet. That's why we're being given these technologies of the Kamasutaras early, so we can override the threshold spiral. So anyway, I'm going to take my jacket off now and get on with graphs and whip through these fast. That's just a starting point. Don't worry, I'm not going through the whole crystal body thing again in light body. That was for the people who've been here a lot. If I seem a little strange, I'm trying to get used to glasses on stage. I'm not used to that at all, and it's really strange. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. It allows me to read the print because I can't see in distance. So it allows me to read the print, and I can even see your faces now instead of fuzzy little blobs with hair or not. Right? However, it's doing something strange with my transmission, because I'm usually transmitting, and the beloveds are transmitting through frequency through my eyes and chakra 6, as well as through my mouth and chakra 5. And I'm noticing it's building up, and it's making my eyes water. So I think the glasses are going to have to go. I'm going to just have to do fuzzy vision here, I guess. Yeah, I just can't deal with it. They're getting hotter and hotter in there. I'm going, oh boy. It just showed me something, though. I didn't realize that so much of the transmissions also came out chakra 6. And they float them into the room. And anybody that wants to, pick up frequency, the information we carry isn't just verbal. There's huge amounts of direct cognition data that is floated in the room, literally on interdimensional particle waves, that will, your fields will respond to, and your fields know how to read those. So it actually helps you in the understanding. All language actually works that way. The invisible interdimensional particle waves are actually the carriers of cognition. It is the encryption. They carry the encryption of the concept or idea someone is trying to understand in direct encryption form, radiation form, and your fields pick up that radiation and directly translate it. And that's why when you see a mouth speak and hear words come out of it or read language on a page, you've actually got the understanding first, and that's the slow way where you get the rest of it. But if it weren't for the fact that you already read the encryption of something and got the part of the direct cognition, you wouldn't be able to make any sense of language. So anyway, we'll start here really quickly. This is for mainly for new people, but also it's, again, another sequence of looking at some of the same data to show context that shows another set of waves to get to the same conclusion point that will take you to the next one for the people who have been here before. All right, we've talked about that before, where we'll sometimes show sequences, repeatedly, but not always in the same order, not always in the same way, because they each carry information in relation to each other. It creates another signature of understanding to go with the same material that allows you to take the leap to the next bit that's new. So we're going to go through these quickly. And again, for new people, there are other classes on video that have covered all of the graphs you'll see fly by, covered them over and over and over again. So if you feel lost on some of the stuff, don't worry about it. The detail, and there's tons of detail for every one of these graphs, right? That tons of graph sequences for every one you'll see. So it is available if you want to find it, in our product list or whatever. It's there. But even if you don't want to, this will give you enough to understand where we are now and what we're talking about. This is simply, if you look at one of these, it's the Cathara grid, and I hope everybody is at least familiar with that, right? The Cathara grid is built upon what is called the Christ code. It is the code of eternal life manifestation of first creation. And the Cathara grid is the core structure. If you looked at each of those as radiation units, each of the Cathara centers, they are the structure of radiation units and the interaction lines that form between them. and it has to do with the core encryption in the tiniest of tiny, and also the largest encryption, or the largest structures that the cosmos is formed on. So it is all built upon the Cathara grid. There are sets of Cathara grids that are interwoven. We have embedded Cathara grids that give you dimensionality, where you'll have like a small one, D1, D2, then D3, and then a larger one called a density one. It's not on this graph. Then you have other structures that are just interrelated Cathara grids that form complex structures on the universal and cosmic level. And planetary level, these are Stargate structures and maps. They're Stargate maps. On the personal level, they are the maps to the literal Stargates within your body structure and your light body structure. Each set of these maps, and I'm not even going to go through all the names and everything, each one of these has a name. It creates the primary levels of your natural light body structure. All right, so you have your lower light body structure. If you're down here, we're down here in this little structure that actually starts here. We're down here in density 1. Okay, little tiny radial body, let's say, is right here. And all of these structures create circles within circles, spheres within spheres within spheres, ever growing larger. And they represent the larger parts of your light body anatomy that are connected to the same parts that are built in the same structure of the planetary, galactic, universal, and cosmic light body structure. So this structure with the Cathara grids, and where you see a Cathara grid, you see spheres, and that is connecting you directly to the spherical formations or the domains of the cosmic light body. Next one, please. I just want to go through these fast and get on with fun stuff. All right. Another thing that we have, if we saw the one we saw before, I think that's going the other way. Can we flip that over? So the Akasha point is over there, please. Yeah. Okay. Now, simply put, this is the Catharic structure of an Akasha system. In the Akasha system, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 Vekas. At the core of that, you have what is called an Eka system. When we talk about the Eka-Veka body system, it's this one. When we talk about the Akasha body, it's that one. And these are connected to larger body structures going up the cosmic matrix. The whole set of spheres and the Cathara grids within them is referred to as a Eucatharista body, and that is the full outer domain light body. There are also a middle, an inner, and a core domain that have the same structures at different angles of rotation going inward. So just to touch base with the Cathara grid, with how they are interwoven to form the map of stargates on the cosmic level, and also the core structure of radiation units upon which matter forms, including your body, are built. Also, down here, you'll notice there are 4 extra little Cathara grids. These refer to the ethos and eros templates, which are different than the 15-dimensional structures that matter structures that emerge out of the inner Veka systems. And these are connected to the larger Akasha light body structure and to the Akasha A light body structure. So this just wanted to remind you that you have people who have been here and people who have not been here. We are dealing with a very intricate structure. These are the bones of creation. All right? They are the invisible bones of creation, the radiation bones, the radiation dots and the lines of transmission between them that form the energetic structure upon which matter is built. Next one, please. Oh, yeah, that one. Why did I put this one here? Oh, dear. I did that. Let me see what one I have next. I want to see what I'm linking together. Okay. All right. Can we do this one first, please? And then we'll put that one. Okay. Now, if we look at our bodies in relation to our just a single Cathara grid, our density Cathara grid, you can tell it's the density one because it stops at the feet area and goes up above the head area where. All right, so that is the placement of the density Cathara grid. That would represent, on a microcosm, the 1 Veka density Cathara grid that was one of the 4 that we just saw and the other thing. Now, if we looked at the 4 together that were like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, and just took these 2 that are on a vertical alignment, it creates what's called the pillar of power. Each one of these Cathara grids, and each one of the Cathara grids on the Veka map, has several spheres around it and embodied within it. Each of these spheres are connected to one of those of the ethos and eros ones, and on vertical axes in our universe, BCM universe, we generate currents, spark pulse currents in our body through the phasing or the moving up and down of these spheres of energy or these Cathara grids. When we do the exercises where we're bringing our arc points up with the arc breathing and bringing our pillar up, what we're doing is phasing this Cathara grid with the ethos up into this density body, which creates in the different layers or the different tubes of energy around us that keep going within us till we get to our central vertical column, we are actually creating sparks of energy, and those sparks collect and re-energize the system, creating the immediate primal life force currents that we are circulating in our body. Okay, so I just wanted to show you where, with the cosmic structure, we plug into the pillar of power part of our anatomy. Next one, please. In this one, these are referred to as transfiguration waves, and everything is built on transfiguration waves. These are the processes of phasing. Now, if you looked at this vertically and you turned it this way, right, you'd again have the two Cathara grids phasing up and down, contracting and expanding the spheres. The DNA is structured this way, and so are what are called time waves. Time waves are literally transfiguration waves where certain spectra of spark pulse currents that we'll see later where they come from actually phase through each other and make different kinds of sparks to bring the matter spectra into existence. You could call them, before we get to particles, we have sparks. The sparks form particles, and the particles form particle waves. And there are all sorts of different waves, and one of the types of waves are time waves. And I just wanted to show the connection between space-time, really brief connection between space-time waves and the pillar of power connection that our bodies run on, but so do all matter bodies. So does the universe run on the phasing of its pillar of power. And it is a living dynamic system. Now, the difference between this natural Christic system is it's an eternal life system because it continually sparks and generates more quantum of current. And it does that in a way because it can expand and contract, because it expands when Source breathes energy out through the system, and it contracts, which means when, say, you breathe up your pillar, you make sparks. Those sparks create what is called a backflow current. It backflows energy to Source, and when backflow goes to Source, and I'm talking about God Source, the original Source before anything manifests, right, past the creation point, on the other point in the creation point door. Right. When we send energy back to Source, Source then again sends an equal quantum of energy back to us. It's an open circulatory system. The Merkaba fields are part of the circulatory system. All the anatomy we've covered in all of the different courses are connected to the circulatory system. So the circulatory system runs on, actually, these transfiguration waves, these time waves, where sparks happen, sparks go to backflow, create waves that go backflow, and then backflow return is given, and that is where the system is re-energized. It is a living system. Systems that are not living, that are built on artificial light, which is a Vesica Pisces configuration, you got 2 circles instead of 3, 2 spheres of light instead of 3. Those systems cannot phase. They are what's called phase locked, where, for instance, any time wave there would not be able to pull itself together and generate new spark pulse currents for each of the dimensional spectra. It would simply exist as it is, and it would only exist because it was a distortion of the original, because the original creation is living. So when things in the original creation get to the point where they are distorted to the point where they're built on Vesica Pisces, which is built on the Metatronic code, at that point they can no longer phase, they can no longer spark, and that's where you get the artificial light creation, which is artificial life creation, which is black hole technology. It is fall technology. When we refer to fallen races, we are talking to races whose literal race shield of their entire gene code that their race was born from has gone into the condition of phase lock and reversal of its natural currents into the Metatronic code, where they cannot connect to the natural breathing universe anymore, which means they have to stick themselves onto something like element 3 in order to suck life force out of things, because they cannot run it directly. Okay, so just a little bit recap there. Another one, please. I'm going a bit fast here because I want to get to the more intricate things on tachyons because that's what's important for us to understand now. If we looked at that same structure that we had the pillar of power, remember we had the Vecca system where you had two more Cathara grids going off this way, and this was the density grid. This is called the primal light field grid. All right, won't even get into which one's particle, which one's antiparticle. That's all in the other workshops. All right, this is just showing you a closer look at. This is your density grid. This one it would be your density Cathara grid, and this one would be the Eka point or the Eka core, and this is where it attaches to the antiparticle primal light field. These phase together as well as the ethos that would be down here, another Cathara grid. Now we got 3 lines of them, right? It is a large Catharic structure. What I wanted to show you here mainly is, since we're talking about light body, and all of this is about light body and how it forms, and now that we've got one, what do you do with it and your keys? Just wanted to show you how these things we've talked about, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Hoover bodies, the 15-dimensional spectra, the radial bodies, all of the, which become the flame bodies, all of the things we've talked about in the other workshops, all of those spheres within spheres. Here's how they fit within the natural structure of the local Vecca Cathara grid, your local body. So this is the beginning structure of your local light body structure. This is where you get your 15-dimensional spectrum, you get your 15 layers of your auric field. This right here, the phasing of these elements, and there's little tiny Cathara grids in all of these too that phase up and down and make lots of sparks. These generate the currents, and these are the primal life force currents of the 15-dimensional matrix, the outer domain currents that are manufactured through the phasing of the Cathara grids and the light cells. These are living light cells that form the light body, and it's because they're living that they spark and can expand and contract in order to spark so they can keep the life force currents flowing. Next one, please. Now, when you take that entire structure of the Eka-Vecca system that we saw first with the 4 Cathara grids, then the +2, and then the plus another set of them outside, what we get when that fully activates, in simple terms, is what is called the chariot of fire. All right? This is the structure of your natural, local, universal light body. This would be you at the center, and there's actually, so that would be your density 4 self, I believe, and then there would be density 3, 2, and 1 self. All right, so you have these levels to your auric field and or levels to what are called your crystal body structure, which we won't get into crystal body now because we'll be here till next Tuesday. But crystal body was covered in the Cathara 2-3 workshops. And some of the 4 as well. So anyway, I just wanted to remind everybody and to let other people know that don't know, this is the rather majestic structure of what is called your light body. So don't let anybody out there tell you, oh yeah, you got a 4 light body system, you got 4 little bodies, and and they do a few things. So you have an amazing structure of living light. You wouldn't, if you didn't have one, you wouldn't be here, because anything in manifestation has to have, it starts out with the natural light body structure. On our planet right now, the light body structure is damaged because the planetary light body structure is damaged, because the solar system's light body structure is damaged, because the galactic one is damaged, because the universal one is damaged. We have been here a long time on a very long journey of attempted healing in this universe. We have a black hole confirmed by science at the core, or pretty much, I think it's, some of them still say it's theory, some say it's confirmed, but at the core of our galaxy, science down here has figured that out. So what we're talking about, that black hole at the center of the galaxy, is not natural. It's evidence of severe distortions in the galactic light body structure. Those distortions filtered down to everything that's contained within that galaxy, including our solar system, including our planet, including ourselves, including every ant or molecule that walks on the planet or floats around in the air. So we were naturally, when our system is working properly, our light body structure is capable of phasing and activating the chariot of fire, and that is the full ascension vehicle, where you can go up and down between the Eka-Vecca systems, you can go into Eka core, you can manifest and demanifest at will. That is a vehicle of a local ascended master. And the guys that are calling themselves ascended masters out there, these ascended masters teaching, excuse me, these guys are D5 adepts. D5 is density 2. All right? This is density 4 plus 5 light structure plus density 6 is not really called a density, which is the Eka core. They don't know this and they don't teach this because they're not masters. So be careful of what teachings you follow, because it's very easy to get led off a Metatronic cliff without realizing that you're being done it. If they don't understand light body structure, they don't tell you about the Cathara grid, and I'm not talking about the Tree of Life that has a different number of spheres and they're stretched out of proportion. That is not the natural structure of Cathara. Natural Cathara is built on the specific Cathara grid that is shown in our work, and that is what carries the Chris code that allows for the phasing of the light cells, that allows for eternal life. The other structures allow for phase lock and Metatronic reversal. Next one, please. That's just showing you, broken out, the different pieces, levels, to the Chariot of Fire full crystal body light body structure on this universal level. Also running through it, you've got axiotonal lines and meridian lines and layers of those. So you've got spheres within spheres within spheres, and this is just your local, from your avatar level down to yourself here. All right, your 4 densities plus there would be the 5th density light, primal light field of your Chariot of Fire body. So the Chariot of Fire contains the spheres of energy. It contains this thing that is called the teliosphere, and part of what we are doing now is healing the core radiation encryptions. All of these little tiny Cathara grids that form on all of these little spheres. All right, every line, you can see the lines that go through here. All right, these lines are those lines. These lines form axiotonal and meridian lines, but they're not just lines. They actually have these little radiation matrices that are built on, or supposed to be built on, natural Chris code Cathara structure, and there are 60 of these. These are called telias, or they're actually like memory tiles. They're radiation tiles, and they are key to the manifestation process. And we won't get into what that is, but I want to remind you that we do have telia, and part of what we heal, when we begin healing the axiotonal lines and the meridian lines and the axiotonal lines, which go with the parallel, we are actually beginning the healing process of the teliospheres, and that means we're beginning to heal our memory matrix. The reason why we can't remember things is because this teliosphere on each of level, because each one of these levels, you have one for each density level, and you also have one for each dimensional level. So basically you have 15 layers of these. These are crystal spheres of gelesic radiation configurations shaped like Cathara grids, and they form inside the body and outside the body, and they hold the structural memory and also the elemental matter imprint for what your body is manifest on. If you're on a planet that has a distorted teliosphere crystal body structure, you will have distortion in yours. It is the distortions on this planet that have wiped our memory and actually implanted false memories. One of the programs that runs through the teliosphere spheres levels of our anatomy are the victim-victimizer programs, and we are beginning the process of being able to have enough current and frequency to begin clearing those out. They're part of what are called the Urta and the Ruta programs, and these get into the core seeds, the elemental seeds, and that's why we need to understand a bit more about elemental command and its connection to keys and tachyons, because it's only through those levels that we can begin to clear and fix and get rid of the false memory matrix, get ourselves out of the loop of the victim-victimizer game where you get into these really ridiculous passive-aggressive type energy exchanges with other people, particularly people you try to bond with, and you don't even know why. What are we fighting about? I have no idea, right? That kind of thing. Do you want to fight? No. Okay, let's not. Right? You get in these really weird loops of, and it's like there's no solution. When you lose track of what you're fighting about between each other, and you're just angry with each other and don't know why, or one person feels picked on, or you start mirroring and reverse mirroring, where you're actually doing something you don't realize you're doing to the other person, and start accusing the other person of doing it, which really confuses the other person. They kind of go, Am I doing that? I thought you were doing that to me, you know. And you get into these things where you don't even realize who is doing what to each other. You know, you go, wait a minute. That's exactly why I'm upset with you, because you just did that to me. As the person saying, and you did this and you did that. But I really don't think I did. Where's the video camera? I want to tape it next time just to see who, you know. I'm talking about relationships that are either conducive or not to sacred sex, right? The issues that can stand in the way. Because if you get where you're in the drama of feeling, one person feels that the other is victimizing them, and what's really funny is for every victim there are two. Which means if you feel, and you may be legitimately being victimized by somebody or something, borrowing somebody's body at the moment trying to harass you, right? You may very well be victimized. But what you don't realize is some part of you is actually victimizing some part of them as well, and you don't know it either. What's really strange is when a person goes through one of these elemental episodes where they actually do the victimization and then shift out of that where they feel that you've actually victimized them and they don't remember what they did to actually upset you. Now, you can do these things too, so it's not just the other person. So the victim-victimizer game is completely tied to the teliosphere programs that are tied to the axiotonal lines, that are tied to the chakras, that are tied to the central vertical column and the pillar of power, and to what is called the Taran light seed, which is at the Azure for the outer domain level, and it's down in your private parts for the middle creation levels, and they're all connected. So anyway, next one, please. Just wanted to remind you of the lotus arcs and breathing, arc breathing, the layers of the arcs that pull the pillar up and down that make the sparks. Okay, just to remind you of the anatomy parts, and just to, for if people haven't seen this, anybody that's new, just so you know, these are parts of it too. All right, which means there's lots of anatomy, and you don't have to learn it all to use it. You know? Next one, please. I bet a lot of you wish they told us that in the beginning. Well, we had to get the books down before you could summarize the information. You know? There's just to remind you again, part of the anatomy, we have our shields. We have our density 1, density 2, density 3, and density 4 shields. We have our Cathara grid. We have our Maharic pillar, which we do the Maharic seal with. We have the embodied Cathara grid. We have the primal life force currents, the Kirashe that flows through in this configuration at the moment, because this is a bypass system. It should go through here, here, and this way. It's a bypass system in this particular universe because of the distortion to the universal stargates going all the way up to density 4. There is a bypass put in this system to sidestep the distortions in what's called metagalactic core, which is the monadic core of this Vecca system. And now what we're doing is opening the currents back up through here because we are able to connect to we're beginning the process of connecting to the middle domains behind that and the inner domains behind that, and they do not have distortions in them. But it is only during a starfire cycle that is possible to do, and we were pushed into early starfire by the activation of the final full activation of the beast machine. It is because of that we've actually been going through time leaps progressively with what's left of the crystal body structure of this universal Vecca, and there's not much left. I think they said there were 3 of the core stars, the 3 of the 12 in a Cathara grid. If you looked at these as the stargates in the universal Vecca system, there are only 3 points left that you can get out from, and one of them is Eartha, which is around Earth, and one of them is, I believe, the Epsilon system, Eridanus, the Eridanus system, which holds SG2, and one is wiped out. I don't know where the next one is, but it might be 4. Yeah, I think, yeah, okay. And 4, there's still a bit of evac that can be done from 4. 3 is the main one, and a bit that can be done from 2, and these 2 aren't looking good, they said. So basically, right now, we're on stage 1 as far as the big events go. Earth is a hosted planet inside of the star Eartha, and the star Eartha is Universal Stargate 3, and that's why Earth is considered Universal Stargate 3, because they both have gate systems that open into the natural Vecca system. It is through this that we will be able to connect to the middle and inner and core domains in order to go through the starfire process, after which comes a rebirth of the light body structure in its natural order. The parts of the Vecca system that cannot go into starfire will go into black hole fall, into one of the already existing black hole finite life systems that the particular one thing is that the threshold is pulling pulling this Vecca system into is called the Wieser-Dirac black hole, which we won't get into heavily now. There's lots of other stuff on that too in other workshops, and I'm sure there'll be more. So anyway, I just want to link all the parts up together. Shields, Merkaba fields, they all fit together. All this anatomy fits together. Very specific relationships, ratios, number ratios. All of these things are important. They have to do with the core CRIST code. And if the numbers are different than the CRIST code, if your Merkaba is spinning not in the numbers that go with the CRIST code, but it's spinning on the Metatronic ones, it means you will be running Metatronic frequencies, and you will not be able to phase your light body, which means you won't be able to spark, which means you won't be able to regenerate your currents, which means you will be in a finite body in a finite system that is eventually going to implode, and then you go home as space dust. See, everything goes home eventually. The fallen ones and the rising ones. It's just a matter of what path you take. Because if you go black hole fall, you can't fall out of the body of God. All right? There's nowhere else outside of it. But you can lose touch with the fact that you're part of it and exist in a system until that system finally burns out at its core, at the core of every Cathara grid at the Azure. You will see what is called a seed atom. Seed atom has X amount of quantum. That quantum renews itself through the processes of the starborn cycle and starfire. And if a system can't starfire, it will not be able to renew the quantum that is in its seed atom, which means eventually its seed atom will pump all of that energy out into manifestation and begin to slow and slow and slow until it finally collapses, implodes, and then explodes. And everything goes back to Partakai dust or space dust. And then on the next starfire, natural starfire cycle of the living system in which that black hole existed, it will all get inhaled as Partakai dust back into source anyway. So it's not as if when you fall black hole, you're damned, you go to hell. You do go to hell because hell is just not remembering you're in heaven. And being in heaven is being within the body of God's source. We all live within the manifest body of God's source. There is no hell other than what we experience when we forget that fact or can't remember it because of distortions in the natural light body structure. Next one, please. And I will apologize for anybody new that's not used to how fast I can talk sometimes. All right? When the wave comes through, I look at these diagrams and something new comes out every time, which is because the beloveds are online directly, and they just kind of like, it's like hitting different keys on a piano. You can make many, many different songs off the same set of keys. Well, each diagram is like a set of keys, and it plays a different tune every time they run a wave through it. So when the wave comes, you can tell when it's a faster wave because I start picking up speed and I start talking really fast and that kind of thing. I will apologize, though, if I'm losing anybody. I'll try to slow it down just a little. Wave modulation. Here we go. Okay. This is just to remind us that all of that anatomy that we saw, including the chariot of fire and all the lovely parts of our anatomy, are connected to the axiotonal lines that run through the body. They came from those spheres. Remember the Talia spheres that have the lines running through them? Oh, no. Here we go again. I was going to slow the arcs down. Hold on a minute. They're actually whipping pretty good. Okay. Talia sphere. Axiotonal lines of the light body spheres around you, and the part of them that runs down through the tubes that come right down into assisting in the manifestation of and running through the physical body system as your axiotonal lines. These are the lines that we have been working with because they are the lines as they exist right now, which is the distortion lines. We are progressively going to, I don't have the charts done yet, to show what lines are going to be where. Once the Shadi activation down here and the Rosetta code activation heals the seed atom aspects up here, that will straighten out the core currents, that will straighten out the lines and the chakras. So we're in the process of healing this configuration, but we had to begin working there because that's what is running on this planet, and that's what our bodies have been carrying. So just wanted to remind you we have axiotonal lines inside and outside the body in the light body cells. The light body cells form lots of parts of our anatomy, but also the 15 layers of the most immediate auric field. We're going to find out some interesting things about the auric fields. They're actually Oort fields Orta fields, which we'll get into after we go through tachyons. And then again, the chakras, just to remind you or to show you that we have those connecting parts of the anatomy, also that we have the DNA template, which is structure. This is not what it looks like if you took a picture, but this is the structure of the radiation template upon which the DNA is built, and there's direct correspondence between each one of the excitonal lines, 12 excitonal lines, 12 DNA strands, 12 teleosphere lines running. So these are all connected. There are actually 3 in the center that connect with the 15 chakras. You have 12 chakras plus 3, that kind of thing. So the 3 at the center connect with those. So just to show you the DNA template, all the pieces of the anatomy, how they connect together. Next one, please. Now we start getting into fun. If there were any diagrams that made me almost nuts, they were these. I was going cross-eyed with these. This is simply, let's do this simply. Okay. You have a central vertical current of energy, yes, that runs up and down vertically in your system. That's called your staff. The planet has one too, and so does every stellar body out there. So does every light body have a staff. The staff has multiple layers to it. One of the layers, most of you are familiar with, will be the Maharic pillar. All right, that is at one layer. Now there are layers going inward of pillars within pillars within pillars, as well as ones going outward. All right, when you get to the core set of pillars within pillars, there is something called the Ruchete spiral. The Ruchete spiral is a set of core currents that come from what is called the Divine Blueprint template, or the Ruche configuration. There's actually several layers to this. To the Ruche, you have a Ruche within a Ruche. But the main current of the Ruchete spiral is these connect. If you put a plate down here, if this was a plate you were looking at this way, you flipped it down here and grew a spiral out of it, this is what the spiral would look like. All right? You have these currents coming down through the central vertical column. There's a couple of smaller, very thin currents sparking up through the middle of that. But there are these sets of spiraling currents called the Ruchete spiral. The Ruchete spiral is responsible for creating the chakra system. You know how you have the chakras coming, where you see the little diagrams with the chakras coming out? There's actually, every chakra should have a cone coming out front, back, and each one on the side, just like this, the vortices here, right? So each chakra level that is formed by these, we'll get into how they're, show a bit how they form. There are things called seals in between them, but in between each of these, chakras form. The Ruchete spiral looks like this when it's not polarized, and that's when the chakras turn off. When the chakras turn on and flow energy, the one Ruchete spiral actually polarizes and splits into two, which means it opens this way. And between the loops, the chakra vortices form. And then when it closes up again, the chakras stop spin and opens again, and they spin more energy in and out of creation, which is part of the process by which your hologram is created, as far as your holographic experience around you, where you see 3D matter, you see yourself as 3D. So the chakra system is manufactured through the Ruchete spiral. The Ruchete spiral connects to a program held in the seed atom, which is at the core of the Azure, and the seed atom, that's the outer domain seed atom, holds a template that looks like this. It was like a little disc sitting this way, running the currents of the Ruchete spiral up and down vertically. So we need to be a bit familiar with the Ruchete spiral, because if we're trying to understand the problem with the chakras, it helps to understand where they come from, and the fact that you have these central vertical currents running through you. These central vertical currents become essential when we're doing elemental command and understanding elemental command, because it is this template that, after a whole series of very interesting progressions of the keys, elementals and elements take on they crystallize into this configuration. You carry this crystallization of core elementals in your body, and they form the elemental currents that run up and down through the Ruchete spiral and through the chakras. We're actually these currents that I talk about being elementals, and there's a few other versions. There's like elementals and elemente and elements and elementi, I think, are in there somewhere too. All right, so there's various different types of elements. So you'll see what they are element families. But they're directly connected to your template, the template that runs from here, from the seed atom on the outer, but also from the middle seed atom called the Shari that is connected to the private parts down here. So the seed atom here runs currents this way, but they run through also the Shari middle seed atom. They haven't been turned on for many eons here because of the distortions in the planet. They have been recently turned on within the indigo shield when we began the Denver workshops in July, when we began the process of the sacred sex workshops. So what we're doing is progressively now we are going to be clearing the currents, the elemental currents, resetting the natural organic elemental templates into the Ruche and the Ruchete template, which is the template that governs the manufacture of the elementals and elements that run through the Ruchete spiral that make our body systems, literally, physically. Next one, please. This is just to let you know that this is the core template known as the Divine Blueprint, and this is actually the 12-12. You got 12 points. Each of these have a set of 12 within them. So 12 times 12 is 144. This template corresponds to the keys in each harmonic cycle. It also corresponds to the families of elementals, and we'll get into that toward the end. But that is the core Divine Blueprint template. This corresponds with that. Each one of those 12 corresponds to one of the DNA strands, and each one of those 12, again, connects to one of the 12 points. See the Ruchete spiral, each one of those points makes a vertical current coming up and down. If that was the dish this way, each one of those 12 points makes a vertical current, and it spins, the dish spins. So those currents spin and make the Ruchete spiral. All right, this current this template connects to this template, the DNA template, and it is through that connection that the Ruchete spiral that is vertically connected to that disk interfaces directly to form the through the DNA template to form the manifest DNA configuration. So it goes right into the body. The Ruchete spiral and the elementals of which it is composed that are formed from the core elemental templates go right in through the DNA template and into chemical manufacture or chemical expression. These elementals are not just things. They are beings. They are consciousness, each from a specific state of consciousness, of the 15 states of consciousness and matter, which we'll see a bit more about later. So I just wanted you to see that the Divine Blueprint template is connected to your private parts, your seed atoms, your Ruchete spiral, and your DNA template. Next one, please. Excuse me. These are really hard to do. All right? This is just showing, and I'm not going to go through each one of these, but what this shows is the connection between, actually, we can move this over just a little bit this way more, please, honey. Thank you. Yeah, that's good. All right, again, the Catharogrid structure. It is showing that the Ruchete is very specifically structured and related to the structure of the Catharogrid, and each one of these, this would be the dimensional scale running here. These would be the interface levels of the loops in the Ruchete spiral. And when the spiral polarizes, it forms these chakra vortices. So the chakras have specific places where they manifest in relation to the Catharogrid structure. So this is very tight anatomy. This is not loose. Well, you kind of have these here and there, those somewhere over there. All of the anatomy that we've shown is very, very coherent within itself. Everything is proportional and relates to each other. So it shows you that your Catharogrid and your Ruchete spiral and your chakras and your DNA template and your axiotonal lines and your teleosphere and your chariot of fire and your crystal body, all of these parts are an amazing interwoven system of living light when they're working properly. What they are when they're not working properly is either made of dead light or made of a blend. And what we've been on this planet for a long time is a blend. Right now, the one blend aspect of the blend is being controlled by the threshold machine and trying to take over our bodies, our planet, and our universe. And it's doing a darn good job. The other part still holds the CRISP code, and we've been working from the beginning for the last 6 years trying to bring the information out where we would be able to generate enough currents in the event that these events took place. Good thing we were. And I thank all of you who've been with us from the beginning that have really helped with this process. All right. Anyway, this is the connection. Cathara grid was over here. You have the outer 8, which are called the octaves of the Richet spiral, and you have the inner 4, which are called the harmonics of the Richet spiral. Put them together, it looks like that would be the vertical current going up and down your system. And again, I'm not going to get heavily into this, but when it polarizes, it expands and contracts, and certain connections are made and not made. There are sets of seals that work in here. These become the chakra seals. It's very, very complex. We're just getting into understanding the dynamics of these, like an accordion that squeezes up and down, the Richet spiral is, and as it squeezes up and down and polarizes and depolarizes, the chakras form and turn on, then they go off, then they turn on again, and it's like a pumping system, how the energies that are generated through the pillar of power in the core and through the various layers of the tubes of energy around you, how those spark pulse currents are actually brought into manifestation through the Richet spiral, which is through the Richet template, through the Richet spiral, through into the DNA, through into chemical elemental manufacture. So they're all connected. And I just wanted to show you that because this gets interesting. Because if when we want to understand our sacred sex parts, it's important to prepare yourselves. Here they come. For those who have been here before, this template, which is the Divine Blueprint template and the Richet template, has a direct relationship not only to the spiral, but also to the seed atom. You have one of these templates carried in each of your shields, actually, but a core one is carried, the elemental core one is carried in the Azure, in the seed atom there for the outer, and for the middle currents that run the middle Richet levels, if you wanted to open the middle domain currents into the outer domain currents, you would need to activate the Shadi seed atom, which it holds at its core the middle template of the Richet. That is the one that ends up down here, where it's running through your body this way. And what we've been doing is a process of opening up by activating the Shadi seed atom down there, activating this core to allow the natural Richet currents from the middle domains to enter into the outer in order to begin clearing the elemental distortions in the outer. They will bond to whatever in your elemental currents is still able to hold a base 3 or a base 6 or a base 12 code. And they will actually host the elementals from the middle domains of your light body structure, will host the distorted outer domain elementals. It will clear the distortions and pull the parts of them that are still viable into host, where even though they might not have enough energy left on their own, if you separated the parts that went Metatronic or the Metatronic crystals from the parts that are the natural crystals, the natural crystals might fall apart because they don't have enough energy to hold their structure because of what the Metatronic ones did. When we bring up the currents from the middle domains through the Richet, we are giving the energetic support from currents that aren't damaged, giving the energetic support into the outer elemental structures of the Richet. So it's supporting the crystalline structures of which those currents are made of. So that's part of what we're doing in this healing. And we're just beginning the process of opening the middle domain Shadi currents, or the inner domain Richet currents. And they come through the private parts and will link, and I believe this is part of what we're doing this time, will link directly into the seed atom on the outer domain, which is at your Azure in your regular Cathara grid, your outer domain Cathara grid. So just remember this when you look at the next couple of diagrams. And remember that's the template that runs the Richet spiral, that forms the chakras, et cetera, et cetera. Next one, please. Okay. This is showing you from the Richet and the spirals, this is still the outer domain stuff. It is showing you the chakras, the 15 chakra system, as it connects through the body from these. It's showing you the horizontal axis chakras. There's actually chakras this way little skinny ones. And then there's formed by the outer set of the spiral. Remember, you had the 4 octaves? So these would be the octave chakras. And in here, inside of some of them, you have the harmonic chakras that are formed by the 4 inner points of the Rushate. So this is just to show you, you have a very complex chakra system. You not only have one vortice here, you also have 2 sticking out sideways and 1 sticking out in the back. So that is a natural configuration. Right now, with the mutation, these, they're actually twisted. I do believe we have, I'm not sure if they're twisted. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what the twist is in the chakras. We know how to fix it, but I haven't analyzed each one of them and where the twist is. But we have 2 of the vortices completely shut off, which means we only have 2 vortices running horizontally in the chakras. And I believe there's a twist in the shield, and I don't know if we have like the sides pointing back to front or what it is yet, but there is a twist in it. These are the things that are going to be healed as we work with activation of the Rushate spiral. These are the things that mess you up sexually. All right? When you have your chakra system distorted, first of all, if you have only half your vortices turned on, there's half of your consciousness that you can't share with each other. Half of your body can't link. There are certain energy fields that are generated in the chakras through distortions in the Rushate spiral on the outer level that create static currents or repel currents between male and female bodies. They're supposed to otherwise harmonize and join nicely. It affects the procreation process. That's part of why it was done, where our bodies have been mutated and our gene code has been mutated so badly at this point oh, I'm sorry, that we produce, when we conceive, when women conceive, they actually conceive on the Metatronic configuration. This was done on purpose to allow certain race strains that did not have access to density 1 physicality to actually take over a planet by incarnating into it, by hijacking the gene lines that were organic to the planet and distorting them in a way that would allow the templates to run what is called the Metatronic sextant code. This is what we're trying to overcome. This is what has been directing part, but not all, of our sexual elementals. The elemental energies that we feel, the Kundalini energies we feel when, or don't feel, when we engage in sexuality. And they are also the same energies that are used in directly manifesting, the direct manifestation process. So we all started out with a sextant crystal in the fetal pattern. And that sextant crystal blocks the natural formation of the crystallizations of matter that should happen on the organic template. We're beginning the process now of clearing those things out of the system, so we'll begin to open up the natural sexual energies, which ought to be interesting. I'm looking forward to that. Like, maybe I'll find a sex drive. I hear they're nice. Yeah, I think I've been like hanging out in my chakras from here up ever since I walked in and just never got down that far or something. And it's frustrating, you know. Bless us. He puts up with me. It's like being married to a nun. You know? But we're confident that will change sometime soon, I hope. Anyway, next one, please. Next one, please. Here we go. Okay, remember auric field levels. Each one of the auric field levels connects to one of the chakra levels. Here, I was talking about that Shadi seed atom and the Rushate template. Now, what you're seeing here is a disk that implies a sphere. All right. So if the disk is running through like a plate this way, in this area, it's actually a sphere of energy that would be, you know, as round as that disk is wide, all right? It would be the same diameter. So it's actually a sphere of energy, but the disk itself runs here. Now, this part of the Shadi seed atom is what's called the monadic level, which is referred to as axis 4, which you'll see later when we get into tachyon cycles. The Rushate connects into that part of the seed atom, but it doesn't start there. It starts in a smaller set of the same configuration that's way down in the center. There's a little dot in the center that would be what is called the Taran light seed of the middle domains that goes with the middle seed atom. In that Taran light seed, there are something called the Ruta and Urta crystals. They hold the crystal program for the elementals, for the middle domain elementals. You have the same thing for the outer domain elementals in your seed atom here, but they have been distorted here because this planet has now gone into what's called monadic reversal. Our seed atoms, the core template, is also going into monadic reversal, but that we've already worked well to overcome a lot of that. Now what we have down here in this monadic level of the Shadi seed atom, because there's actually other levels that extend out from there around the body and bigger spheres, and there's also smaller levels that go down into what's considered the Axis 1 Taran living light unit, and these are the set that go with the middle domains. They're called the Eden domains, the Garden of Eden domains, yes. Anyway, there's a core program in there that we're going to find out how that connects to the keys and to the elementals, and we've begun the process of waking up Axis 4 of the Edenic Shadi seed atom. We began that in the Denver workshop with transmissions that the beloveds have given through the indigo shield, because at this point the planet seed atom itself is gone into reversal. It can't actually hold those activations. It's because the indigo tribal shield is on this planet still that any of these frequencies can reach anybody or anything on this planet. All right, so anyway, we have the Shadi level 4. The level 4 of the Shadi activated in July, and that occurred, and it was able to occur during something called rebirth of the monad, which is the 4th rebirth in what is called the starborn cycle, which we'll get into a little bit later. Now, at this point, we have gone through the monadic key cycle of the middle keys and the outer, because our outer and the indigo shield is following what the middle is doing because the middle currents are stronger. All right, so we are progressively becoming different than your average people on the planet, because the average people on the planet are still, all of their currents are still running off the seed atom at the Azure only, and that has now been harnessed by threshold, which means it's being pulled into Metatronic reversal into forming of what are called the sextant keys, which are hexagonal keys, which are an unnatural configuration of crystal keys. Because we have begun the process of activating the Eden currents, the middle domain currents, those currents will progressively heal the currents in our Rushate, and the Rushate will bring them up to the seed atom. We've also started, in February, we started with activation of the Taran before this planet went fully into reversal of its light seed, of its Taran. We, as the indigo shield, anchored the activation of the Taran to begin the starborn cycle that would lead to the starfire cycle, so that we didn't get pulled, so our seed atoms didn't fully get pulled into Metatronic reversal. This is all about controlling your Kundalini currents, and who's going to be doing it? You or somebody else you don't even know that's taking you someplace you don't want to go. So anyway, we are beginning now. In July, we activated the monadic level. In August? Yeah, August. We activated what's called Axis 5, which is called the Amaray hub cell level, which would extend out from here. And what we are going through this weekend is activation of level 6, and that is called the Divine Blueprint level, or the 144, the ADON 144. So progressively, since we had the activations since the activations of the Shadi began in Denver in July, we've gone through expansion of those spherical light structures that come from that template as the template progressively activates. So we're beginning to pull in more of the Eden elemental currents, which means elemental keys. We are going to activate the Divine Blueprint level during these 2 days, and it's because of that, and because there has been enough people in the indigo shield that did these earlier activations, that even if you just came in, you can just do the activations of the Divine Blueprint 144 now, and it'll backrun the activations in your own self, where you will get activation of what we had in Denver. Even if you weren't in Denver, you'll get activation of the level 5 one that we had in Phoenix during the Hethalon, that's the word, Hethalon workshop. So this is why we didn't have to do a lot of prep for this class, like go through all the things we just did in the last 3 workshops in order to get new people up to parts. Because it's the 144 ADON, it carries the core elemental divine blueprint in it. We can run that directly into the Ruta and the Siddha, which are the little tiny things inside of the Taran. And inside of the Taran there is a Pardaki unit. Inside of the Pardaki there's these little tiny crystals, and it's those crystals that hold the core elemental patterns. Those core elemental patterns can be activated in their natural order on the Edon level. That will trigger activation or reset of them in the outer domain level at the Azure, and it will allow those after a few phase cycles of that we'll talk about later of the tachyons in our fields and the keys in our fields, those core Ruta activations will simply spread out and trigger the activations going from the center outward until what you activated on the outside is caught up. You catch up with the middle layers from it because you activated what was at the core. So that's why we don't have to go through activating the monadic level 4 and then the level 5 again. So we got kind of people that are just come in, you're kind of lucky there. But you do get a blast when you are at a workshop as far as the strongest activation you can get will be when it's being run, when it's first hitting the indigo shield. And that's when we're all assembled together with the workshops. The fact that there's so many people assembled together allows the beloveds to send stronger currents in, because there's more people to balance them in the indigo shield. So it is still, it's the best way to get the activations is to be there. But there's kind of like a, whoops, couldn't make it for the first 2, but there's almost like a, can catch up really fast. It will take a little bit longer. People that are new will be a little bit behind the activation levels of the people who have been to both of the other 2 workshops, but you will catch up. Your bodies will catch up eventually, and it won't be like 6 years eventually. It won't be too long. I have a feeling it's probably going to be by Axis 9, the Peru trip, I think. Yeah, I think so. There's something big going down with that I don't know about yet, but I know it's big. Right? So I have a feeling everybody's going to get caught up by then. Because, see, even if you never come to another workshop again, if you're connected with the indigo shield through your own gene code, if you came in as an indigo, or even an angelic human that isn't a full indigo that has more DNA strands, at this point, the angelic human shield, anything left of it that can be hosted so it doesn't get pulled into threshold, will connect to and it will receive frequencies from the indigo shield. So wherever an angelic human is that still has the ability to ride ascension wave, it will be able to pick up in the atmosphere, literally, the frequencies that the indigo shield is holding. And any indigo, no matter where you are on the planet, will also be able to pick up those frequencies. You get them stronger when you're in the collective where it's first being given. So there is an advantage to it. You will activate faster and you'll be able to reach state faster and those kind of things. But this is something that goes out through the world, through Earth, and extends to anyone who can still ride ascension. So anyway, we'll get to the next diagram. I'm not going to go through all of these heavily because I'm going to cover the gender differences more tomorrow when they give us some more information. What I want to get through is keys and tachyons, but I wanted to show you how they're connected to these things. This over here is the monadic level of the Shadi, where you see each one of those template points, right, in the Ruche, the Rushate. There is a sphere, a light cell, and those cells phase, where these two come together and spark. 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 Then the inner 4 spark. So this monad, just like the core crystals deep inside do the same thing, create spark currents. These are the Adonic spark currents that are coming in from the middle creation level that have the ability to heal the outer creation level ones. This is the same configuration of level 4 in your own seed atom up here in the Azure, but that's the damaged one at this point. So these are living light cells that are capable of phasing, which is sparking together, coming together and sparking, making a quantum, coming together, sparking, making a quantum. All right? So they are spark generation light cells that fuel the body and the Rushate currents. All right. Next one, please. couldn't just leave the girls exposed up there. I had to get the guys in on it as well. Right. These are very quick diagrams, by the way. They're not exactly, they're not like the pretty pictures you see in Kama Sutra books. I didn't have time. What it's showing is the same template, right? Both males and females, and this is again just showing the level 4 monadic level of the Shadi template. Both males and females have the same template of the outer. You have the outer set of octaves, and they spin clockwise, and you have the inner set of harmonics, and they spin counterclockwise. So in that regard, the male and females are the same down there. I'm not going to get into the spark generation points and stuff here. I'll save that for when we get more intimate tomorrow on the genders. But it just shows you there are currents. Each one of these templates has a sphere, and each one of those spheres directs, remember, every one of those dots creates a current of vertical energy running through the body, right? The core template creates the Rushate, but these create other currents that spiral up through the body and around the body. So each level of the Shadi that comes into activation has its shield or template, or that plate, and from the plate there are vertical currents, and because the plates are spinning, the vertical currents form spirals of energy. What's interesting is, at these areas between the points of the Rushe configuration, they are the spark points. When those sparks occur, there are other currents that turn on, the spark currents. And this is where you get more Kundalini activations coming through than, say, when you're just at the grocery store, that kind of thing. So we're going to, as we begin to bring our Shadis out of seed atoms, out of dormancy, we are getting them where they're beginning to spark again. So it's beginning the process of turning on little bursts. They're not full currents yet, but when a spark happens, there's a burst sent out. And eventually they spark so fast, and this is where eventually we'll get into Karma Sutra breathing and those kind of things, where, you know how when people get involved sexually and the breathing and the heart rate and all that kind of stuff kind of increases and people are huffing and puffing and, you know, that kind of stuff? Well, there's something happening with our template that shouldn't be right now because of the Metatronic mess, but when we've got that cleared, what happens is those little configurations, the Rushe points, the elemental crystal points, come together and spark faster and faster and faster. So you're generating more and more and more and more and more and more spark pulse currents, which are more and more and more and more keys, right? And eventually you hit a peak where a whole bunch of stuff that's really complicated happens, but those currents activate the core currents down in the center of the Edonic Taran, which is the light seed, in its little part of key in its center. It activates very specific currents that allow a connection between the set of what are called the Aurora fire crystal keys to come from one body and merge with those from another. And those keys together they carry, the Aurora keys together, under normal circumstances, have the ability to open the gates within your body, and also within the atmosphere, if your planet can do it, between what are called the Adore and the Ettore sides of creation. It's like Ettore is on this side and Adore is up here. It allows the gates to open between those levels, and it allows one to pull into source, or at least into the next state. So under normal circumstances, if you're in an outer domain body and you have some of the fire keys, and you have this set of fire crystals, you would be able to connect with certain persons who have a complement set of fire crystals, but also a complement set to you. This is where certain, like there is significance, and there has been historically, to twinning and those kind of things, as far as you do have a complement here. You have several, actually. You have one in the antiparticle universe that is just kind of local, and then you have another manifestation of self in the Adore system as well. To come into one implies you will have a manifestation of yourself, even if it's not fully in physical incarnation, in the other system. All right, so anyway, when sexuality occurs, when orgasm occurs, it allows for the core to open, and under ideal circumstances, the core currents can connect, and the two bodies can literally demanifest and go into being an orb of consciousness and move together as one without losing the sentience or the integrity of either of the two. All right, it's like the two become one, become three. Right? So you have the consciousness field and the expansion of both of you merged, which is actually greater than the sum of its parts, and you still have the consciousness focus of each of you as individuals, and of each of you unified. So it's a this is why in the old Kama Sutra concepts it was kind of like cosmic sex. You meet God through sex. You don't have to have sex to do that, though. It's about the keys. And the reason sex has been so important for so long on this planet and many other places similar to it is because it allows for the key to states, which are the key to the elemental kingdoms and the key to the light body structures that allow you to move back and forth in time if they're activated, that allow you to ascend or come back into matter. So sexuality is directly and intimately connected to the science of ascension and to the art of ascension. And it has been highly abused on this planet. And we are running programs in our bodies right now where if you're a person running around getting thresholded by the Metatronic spiral on this planet, you probably won't even know the difference. But because all of your elementals are being directed one way. But indigos, azurites, and angelic humans who have been hosting through our shield have a real challenge because we've been progressively activating the healing currents and the clearing currents. So you got part of your elementals and their chemicals pulling you one way and part pulling the other way. And I think with me they just kind of neutralized in the middle and said, we're not going to do nothing until we got it fixed. I don't know. That's what it feels like. But my body just doesn't like to even go there until maybe I know too much about the template being distorted from the Rushite distortion on the outer domains, but where I just have an aversion to it. But that will heal. So I'm looking forward to Kama Sutra healing as well. So maybe I can get the rest of my currents flowing in the physical. And there are so many things that once we understand this direct connection between ascension, our bodies, each other, we can talk about what does making love really mean. We can talk about how do we activate things like, say, we don't want to have sex right now. That's fine. There are other ways of communion, because what sex really is one expression of the art of communion. The art of communion is the coming together, just like you have you have a Partakai, and you have another Partakai, and the one Partakai splits and goes into polarity, and now it has two, but it's linked by a third. Well, in communion, the two come back together as one, and they go back into the third. And there's a whole state of expansion. There is a level of love, the feeling of love, which is not just a feeling of lust or an itchy bit happening. You can't even describe the unconditional state of love that comes from true communion. And communion, we can begin to heal ourselves from the victim-victimizer program that's running through our Rushite, that's running through from our distortion in our seed atom on the outer. We can begin to heal this so we can start to get little bursts of what real love feels like. And real love will come as Kundalini activations, sometimes where you'll feel them sexually, other times where they'll be up here in the higher seed atom, where you'll get bursts of being in love with the atmosphere. You happen to walk outside, look at a tree, and all of a sudden, pop! And you're just like almost orgasmic in the state of absolute communion that you can have with that tree or that flower. Or you can be sitting there looking at nothing in your room, closing your eyes, and all of a sudden, bang, it happens. You just feel this communion with the universe. You start to feel the reality of your connection to the light body of Source and to your own through the fact that those currents are starting to turn back on. That is the natural state of being for races who didn't go into distortion, Metatronic distortion in their shields. They live in a continual state of unconditional, absolute love. That doesn't mean they're pushovers. That doesn't mean you can go and if you're a fallen one, you can go and suck all their energy and suck them dry and kill them. They're not going to let you do that. Why? because they also know themselves as a unit of the consciousness of God's source, as well as that tree or that flower or that person. And they will honor the part of God that is them as well, and they will not allow themselves to be harmed. They will, in certain circumstances like this, where it comes to defending yourself because things attack you directly, that's one thing. Now, if you have enough currents and your full currents are flowing, you don't have to ever raise a hand to another being, even if it's attacking you. In fact, beings learn not to attack people like the Aeonian things quite quickly because, well, you get bounced back. So if you're going after someone, all of a sudden you hit about here and you go flying 60 feet that way, you might think twice about rushing at them again. You know, if you go to whack someone and all of a sudden your arm goes back almost 360 degrees and you break your shoulder, you realize it's not a good idea, right? So there is a time, it won't be for a while, that we will learn to not even have to defend ourselves because our field strength alone will do that. But Christic beings, even though they can live in a total state of communion, they never strike out with, they can be angry at an act. They can look at a fallen one who's doing something horrible, like, murdering a child or something like that, and absolutely be passionate about being against that act. But they will still absolutely love the being that is doing it. And that's a real hard one, particularly when you're dealing with fallen angelics who are just sucking your system down a black hole. It can be really hard to forgive. But in a state of communion, you also can feel the part of them that is in you and the part of you that is in them. So you can reach a level of understanding. And this is what Source does. This is why Source doesn't judge. Source allows. It allows the fall or the rise. It prefers the ones who rise, who honor original will and intention and abide by the natural physics laws that go with an eternal life, Christic universe. But Source does not hold a grudge against those who choose the path of opposite expression, because ultimately they will teach themselves that there was a better way, often by losing that way. And that's what the black hole fall people do. So there's a state of communion that can be reached. And the communion happens because the more of your currents that you get opened in your biofields, and then you connect your currents, which are coming out this way and running up that way and also flowing through your chakras, right? You connect those with another being. And you can have the most amazing amplification of each other's fields as your keys and their keys come together to make the energy you're both carrying even bigger. So there are huge potentials, and this is what the Kama Sutra text involving sexuality, we're trying to explain, that sexuality is an art. It is a cosmic art, because it is really just a part of the art of ascension and of being at one with God's source. That's been really kind of lost in the translations in the Western world, where they just show you different positions and, neat stuff you can do that feels good, that kind of thing. Those things are okay too. It does, there's nothing wrong. Nobody ever said you just have to do it in the missionary position in order to be cosmic. There are different positions that actually create different interfaces between different energy currents. We'll eventually learn about those, but first we got to get the main current straightened out, and that's why we're activating the Umshadi levels. I will go into tomorrow more about these things, the differences and the similarities between the males and the females. Basically, the outer, the harmonics on the monadic level and the octaves on the monadic level are the same. They both spin the same direction. But when we get into the more internal currents, there are differences in polarity, charge, and spin direction, and those kind of things. And right now there are distortions in the way the currents come down through these shields, because sitting on top of what would be the natural Umshadi shield is an artificial Metatronic shield. And it actually takes those currents, it actually shut them off. We're activating them now, and then we're going to use them to clear that Metatronic mess from there, so then we can clear it up, working up through the currents. But right now, there's a distortion that takes place of any natural currents. There aren't any coming through from the Umshadi Enon itself, but there are ones that are running down from, up and down through the staff from the seed atom, at the azure, the outer domain seed atom. And those currents are creating absolute messes down here in relation to what's sparking or not sparking and what keys are doing when men and women come together, or men and men come together, or women and women come together. When you orgasm, what is created, what kind of sparks are released, what kind of keys are released or shared when a person orgasms while the Metatronic template is still controlling the Rushite. It means you are generating what are called dead light units that are built on the, instead of having 3 little spheres of light or 3 little sparks of light stuck together, they only have 2. And they are a phase lock set. They're considered dead light spectra, and they are the food for all sorts of fallen angelics, including the fallen angelics technology, such as the Beast machine. We have been used for many centuries now on this planet. All of the life forms that, particularly mammals, that copulate through this particular way, but even trees in a different way, have been used to generate these artificial light units, the Vesica Piscis light units. When keys come together, they reach a crescendo peak, and you orgasm. The sparks from the keys go flying out into your auric field levels. They form clouds, different layer clouds around the body and through the body. They fuel the auric levels. When you're producing Metatronic keys, you're making